We are going to transition right over to our first presenter, Grant with Saunders Construction.
Good morning. How is everybody? That's not good enough. How is everybody? All right, good stuff. Let's see. How do you leverage assemblies? All right, I was asked to kind of bring some energy. And last night I met several of you guys, and yeah, where's Chris? That's who it was, right? Last night I met some of you guys, and everybody was like, man, you're a little overdressed for this. I don't know what's going on. I was like, I'm the first speaker at Precon World ever. Like, I got my Beck socks on. Right? Come on, man. Ready to rock and roll. Like Summer said, my name's Grant Stucker. I'm with Saunders Construction. We are a Denver commercial GC up and down the Front Range. We've got a couple offices, one in Denver, a little south of Denver actually. That's our main office. That's where I work out of. We've got another office that's out in northern Colorado in Fort Collins. That entity is called Saunders Heath. And we've got another entity down in Colorado Springs. That's Saunders Norwood that we just opened last year. We do a lot of self-performed work. So we'll talk about that a little bit here in a second. And I've been with them for about 12 years, in the pre-construction office for about 6. Yeah, let's get into assembly. So who here is using the DESTINI system? Show of hands. Probably most of you, right? I heard about 80-20, right? Who of those people that are using it are using Assemblies? Okay, not too bad. And who of you guys, like me, think that Assemblies is one of the best things about this platform? Cool. So everybody else, I'm going to convert you. Absolutely, 100%. But before we talk about how we use Assemblies, let's talk about the definition of Assemblies. And I'm sure you guys have seen this from a lot of the demo teams, implementation teams on what an assembly is. So I'm not going to talk a whole lot about that, but I'm going to talk about how we use it at Saunders. So define assembly. This is Beck's definition of assembly that we used. It's a group of interrelated line items with a series of questions asked about them. Pretty much the sum of all the parts, right? Everybody kind of knows what an assembly is. The exterior skin all the way into the interior finish, and all the questions that get asked about that interior finish, about that entire assembly that make up the sum of the parts, that populate your estimate, right? So in this case, up on the screen is an exterior wall assembly. You could have, what is the exterior skin? It's stucco, it's metal panel, it's brick veneer. Okay, what's on the back side of that? Is it rigid insulation, spray applied insulation? Is there fluid applied air barrier, Tyvek? What's the framing behind that? Is it stick framed? Is it steel framed? What's the cavity insulation in there? Is it bad insulation? Is it spray foam insulation? And then what's on the finish side of that? Is it gypboard? Maybe there's plywood in some instances. Maybe there's wall covering. All that makes up an assembly, right? So I think we're all on the same page of what that is. And then why would we use assemblies? Well, there's definitely 2 reasons why. I think there's the business case, which is kind of the dollar sign, and then there's the people case. I like to think that at least the people that I'm working with are focused more on their people than they are on just the bottom line of things, hence why they purchased a platform like this. It makes us more efficient, makes us faster without sacrificing accuracy. In fact, I would actually argue that it makes you even more accurate because, like Stuart was saying, it eliminates and reduces some of those low-value tasks, some of those mundane things that we have to do as estimators. Maybe that is data entry, right? Let's do a takeoff over here, and then let's hand type all this takeoff over into our estimate. Let's make sure that we're saying, and I'm an Excel user as well, used to be an Excel user. Let's take an exterior wall assembly, for example. You've got an 07 metal panel right here, and then we're going to tie that to our another 07 insulation section over here. We're going to tie that to another 07 fluid applied air barrier section down here, and we're scrolling up and we're scrolling down, and you guys know what you got head nods. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? It takes some time. Assemblies cuts a lot of that time out, but it also gives you, it eliminates some of that human error. You know, maybe I fat finger something here and there, which I've done several times. So there's a business case and there's a personal case. It makes our people more efficient, makes them faster, gives them the opportunity to do more high-value tasks, like Stuart was mentioning, making our buildings better, having conversations with our design teams on which products we're using, having conversations with our subs on what unit prices some of these things are coming out. And I know that there's a lot of conversations about that in the last 24 months. Escalation's been killer. So how does Saunders use Assemblies? So kind of the 4 topics that I'll talk about is it's become a really key part of how I estimate and how I put things together. I'll talk about that here in a second and a little bit more of Saunders' self-perform work. It captures a lot of the indirect items. It's not just about the materials that are building up that assembly. It's about miscellaneous labor that's in that assembly, miscellaneous equipment that has to be used in that assembly, survey. So many different things that you can put into these assembly questions to capture that estimating mindset. I mentioned it reduces that low value task, increases your high value, the time you spend on high value tasks. Excuse me. And then I want to talk about a little bit where we were prior to purchasing this system and being an Excel-based user, and how I have definitely converted a lot of folks into this platform by just doing some demos of assemblies. So the key part about how Saunders uses Assemblies is we're a self-performed concrete contractor, mostly structural concrete. We don't do a lot of site concrete. Does anybody do self-perform in this room? Yeah, so quite a lot of you. So you guys know how much detail needs to be put into those estimates, right? And if there's self-performed concrete folks, it's, you know, what's my square foot of form work? What's that rental unit rate? What's the PSI concrete that I'm going in? What's the ready mix unit price that I'm getting from my ready mix supplier? What's my rebar pounds per cubic yard or pounds per square foot? What's my productivity rate for building formwork? What's my productivity finish rate for place finish? All those kind of things that are questions that have to be asked every time. And if you don't know to ask those questions, you kind of go to the more senior level person that does know it, and they have to spend quite a lot of time making sure you understand how to put these estimates together, right? So Saunders uses that in the self-perform side, and I've heard that there's a lot of great enhancements that are coming for self-perform. On top of all the other assemblies that we have, I think we have like 40-something assemblies, and all of those have some sub-assemblies that all have multiple amount of questions that get asked, and it builds our entire estimate. Let's go next. Where's next? There we go. So back burner items. Let's say you're doing a flooring assembly, and we want to capture what type of flooring it is. We want to capture if there's any moisture mitigation in that we need to put down. But we also want to capture finish protection, right? Something that young estimators may not think about. We want to capture all that finish protection that's being put on there. Maybe we spray on some Scudomat or do some ram board here and there, or protecting our doors, frames, and hardware. We want to make sure that that's in the estimate. We also want to capture what the price of that is. We want to capture the removal of all of that. And you can ask these questions in these assemblies. We've got some utility assemblies for linear footage of RCP pipe that's any given size, PCP pipe that's any given size, and we want to make sure we're capturing the cubic yardage of earthwork that gets removed from that and cubic yardage of backfill that has to be put back in. And we do self-performed survey as well, so how many points along the way do we need to have our survey points in there? Those are all questions that get asked in these assemblies. Miscellaneous labor, like interim cleanup, stuff that we know that we have to have a full-time carpenter foreman on the job for the duration of the 16 months that we're doing this, and we're going to capture him a little bit over in 06 rough carpentry. We're going to capture him a little bit in 01 general requirements. We need to make sure we have an equipment plan. How many times do you step into an estimate review, and the senior level chief estimator maybe who's reviewing that says, show me your labor plan, show me your equipment plan. You go, oh, I need to go back and probably put some of that stuff in. Well, it's kind of at the forefront of your mind when you're doing these assemblies and those questions are just being asked over and over, highly repeatable. I see some head nods, right? Everybody's tracking? I mentioned the removal of low-value tasks, or at least reducing low-value tasks and spending more time on high-value tasks. And one of the things that I actually try to tell a lot of my folks is a high-value task doesn't necessarily need to be business-oriented. You know, my wife works full-time. I've got 2 small kids. I want to be present in their lives. And this system and using these assemblies has given me the opportunity to maybe go home a little bit earlier, to go coach my son's baseball team, to go cook breakfast for my kids, to be present in my family's life. And I've seen some guys that I work with that have really been hung up on this change, but they're getting there as early as you can possibly get there. They're the first ones there, they're the last ones to leave. And I get that they wear that with a badge of pride, but at the same time, I've seen how it affects their at-home relationships. Let's see. Okay. So we used to have a very robust, and I'm sure everybody in this room feels the same way, a very robust, very sophisticated Excel, macro, everything spreadsheet. It was cool. And when I first came into the pre-construction office, I was like, I don't even know how to work this thing. This is like control alt this, and all these macros get popped up, and it was wild. And the guy that really made it, he's been with our company for 25 years, super proud of it, as he should be. And I think Doug in here, who's probably worked mostly with us, can attest to this, in very sophisticated spreadsheet. And I thought we were cutting edge. I really did. Well, at some point in time, I want to say 2017 or something like that, Microsoft had put some form out there that said, we're going to the cloud, and Visual Basic and macros may not be supported at that time. And we were like, at least that's what it was told to me. That's how it was explained to me. And we were like, oh, well, we should probably figure something else out. Maybe we should look into some of these off-the-shelf products, maybe these database-driven estimating platforms. And obviously, we landed on the estimating platform. And when I first saw that demo, I was like, we are archaic. Like this estimate needs to go. I'm sorry, I brought Chris, who was selling the platform to us, aside, and I was like, hey, Kay, you need, like, she's been here for 30 years, you need to make sure you're telling her this, and this, because I was advocating for it tremendously. And now, Kay, who was with us for 30 years, she retired the last couple of years, we actually hired her back as an independent consultant to purely work on building assemblies. And I'll never forget when she was in that meeting, in that demo with Beck, she asked the question, yeah, we're eliminating all these low-value tasks, but are we just automating it and removing the mindset of an estimator's checklist that they go through? Like, I don't want my mindset that I've built 30 years to build just to be automated, and now I'm irrelevant. Well, it's quite the opposite. It actually, through the assembly build, and having her do it, has captured every single question that she would ask herself of every single scope of work, and just puts it right there next to you as you're building this. As I'm doing my estimates, I can feel her right there saying, did you look at that? What's that? Did you look at that? Did you pay attention to that? You guys know what I'm talking about. So some lessons learned. Like I said, we hired out the assembly build process. That cannot be underestimated. It's not something that you can just pull off the shelf and say, hey, yeah, we want that one, and we want that one. Make it work. It's definitely very intensive. I mean, we went through a full years-long implementation process for not only the assemblies, but also the line item database build. And we definitely had to hire Kay to be a huge part of that. So do not underestimate the time it does take to do that. It's significant. And we always say garbage in, garbage out. You know, we've got a really, really good database with a lot of properties, a lot of conditions, a lot of information that's in there, and that it then informs all of our assemblies. And testing that along the way, definitely especially if you have some folks who have done certain things for a certain amount of time, as soon as you run into a bug or you run into a problem, they just go, this thing doesn't work. I'm not doing that. So test it along the way and make sure it's working, make sure it's ready to implement before you guys roll these kinds of things out. I mentioned assemblies are only as good as the line items in the database. Definitely make sure that you are spending the time and bringing in the right people to inform that implementation process. So some key takeaways here. One thing I didn't mention is how trainable this is. I've got several young estimators that we just brought on in the last year because we're blowing up in Denver. And how many times have you guys had help, but you don't really feel like you're going to be using that help because you want to do it yourself, because the time it takes to train that person is just going to take too much time. Well, like Stuart was saying, we need to raise everybody up around us, and let's train them and get them on the same page so that the next job, they're much better and we can trust them. Well, for these assemblies, I essentially can say, here's just how you do it real quick. You just click on the assembly, you click on this, and you start answering these questions. As soon as they know how to do that, I say, go play with it. Here's your scope of work, exterior skin, go put that together. Here's your scope of work, all the roofing, go put that together. Write down anything that you don't know, any questions that are being asked, because it's dynamic. As soon as you answer one question, it pops up and says, okay, well, you answered tapered insulation for a roofing assembly. What's the slope of that taper? So anything, I don't have to be right next to them while they're building this and really educating themselves on this kind of stuff. Highly trainable, highly repeatable, and it makes everybody learn the same way. I told this analogy to Julie when we were putting this presentation together. It's like somebody, when we started using this platform, it's like somebody handed me a chainsaw, and I was just ripping through estimates. And you think, wow, you're going way too fast, you're going to make mistakes, and you're going fast, but you're not sacrificing accuracy, not at all. And I can look over at some of the guys that are still doing what we used to do, and they're using an axe, and they're just like methodically hacking away at the estimate. And then someone comes, we have an open office concept, and then someone comes up to them and says, hey, Greg, how was your weekend? And then you forget what you were doing. So definitely encourage you guys to look into this and to think seriously about it. I'm more than happy to do demos for you guys on how we do it in a self-perform sense and how we capture a lot of those indirect items. It is a game changer. You know, I think it's similar to when, anybody in here use digitizers for takeoff? Yeah, a lot of hands. I think those same hands were down when I said who uses assemblies, right? It's just that, it's that different. It's that game-changing and breakthrough. And it's where the industry is headed. I have owners and clients and design teams asking me about assemblies and showing them estimates and detailed estimates purely based off of how we did the assembly build. So I've got a QR code. This is my information if you guys want to connect with me, want to send me any kind of email and let me know if you want further demo, further questions, and you just want to know more about it, how we do things. Or if you just are interested in coming to Colorado and checking out Saunders, you know, more than happy to. Well, that's all I've got, guys. I appreciate you letting me take the time to come talk to you. I really want to thank Doug, and I want to thank Chris. I know DJ's not here anymore, but I want to thank DJ. Those guys were huge in the implementation process. Really, if you guys are in the middle of it, really leverage your Beck team to build this thing the right way. So I appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much for letting me come out.